Now we'll call the meeting to order. Okey doke, click on the got it. We're good to go. Welcome, everybody. I don't know if anybody else, I was telling Jessica I have sort of a candy hangover this morning from eating way too much from the bowl of trick-or-treating. It's like, Bill, hide the candy from me. So the first order would be to approve the October meeting minutes. They look good to me. Does anybody have any corrections or anything? Okay, then I will declare them approved as written. And thank you very much, Bobby. Bobby and I went through a lot, but not through a lot, but it was kind of, yeah, anyway. So summary of the last meeting. This mainly that we reached an agreement on our targets or topics, the issues, which would be, and I think it's in the agenda, so I'm sure you have it in front of you with in the rank order, the budgetary support for the collection as our number one priority right now. And the censorship and intellectual freedom and expanded and uniform hours. And the censorship and intellectual freedom will definitely remain on the list, as will the expanded and uniform hours, but we'll just be ready for intellectual freedom if we have attacks. And the expanded and uniform hours is kind of a moot point because of the budget situation. So is that okay? Does that look okay to everybody? I'll do,
Yes.
yeah, we're good. Okay, so then the next item, the review of trustee fan duties. And I was working on stuff yesterday and thinking about this, and I came up with the idea because Jessica and I met and had a really good discussion of things with the feeling that maybe Sujatha and Parker, you can share that we're sort of amorphous right now, kind of unfocused. It felt that way to me. And what occurred to me is to concentrate on the trustees' fan duties or trustees as advocates. It's sort of like focus on something that maybe we can do. And what we have are general duties: advocate regularly, stay alert to opportunities, meaning, for example, at the opening of Lorton, there were a lot of elected officials there that to talk to, and not just elected officials, but the county executive was there as well. And then develop an advocate list. So I want to stop on this topic and share with you some of my thoughts and see what you think about this. And I, using different documents from different workshops that I went to, I came up with what is a main duty, which I think this really hits it: raising the library's profile among decision makers and community stakeholders, which kind of focuses on what are we talking about doing, and duties for current trustees. So to become familiar with the range of library programs and services, which information is provided to us by the outreach committee quarterly. Sorry, my watch is dinging at me. I have a message. And so I think that's it. So we have that information provided to us, which we then use to communicate. We can use that to communicate. And I want to add to that, communicating the role that the library plays in the community in diverse settings rather than only in the library. In other words, some of the cooperative things that happen at different branches, and the fact that our children's youth services people go to daycare centers and work with kids outside of the library. And I was thinking about it, I don't know, last night or something, and I was thinking, in a way, the library goes into everybody's home who borrows a book, whether it's an ebook or a physical book. So I think the idea that, we really do, it's not just a warehouse of books or a place that you go for programs. We really do we reach into people's homes, especially during the pandemic with Zoom, where, you know, that's all that people could do. And so that was something that I thought about that, and I thought that was an important thing to think about. And I think that goes with, I think someone from this committee suggested the term, or maybe no, it was Diane, that we're second, you know, not first responders, but second responders. And that may be overly dramatic, but I think the idea that what role we play in the community is more than just being a building, you know, where people can go. And so for trustees to have that as a point to communicate. I'm sorry, I have to turn this phone thing off. You can't hear it, but you know, when you get a text and it goes do 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 do, it won't stop. Now it stopped. Okay. So those are the communication things, communicating what the library programs, which that information we get from the outreach, and then what programs or what role we serve in the community in cooperation with other, I guess I said two things, you know, in cooperation with other agencies. And then the idea that we're more than a physical building. And then how, which is what came up, which is in the other list, which is interacting with local leadership individually, as well as group interactions, to strengthen those connections and address specific issues. And I think well, there are lots of examples of that, like with the Rotary and their environmental award, you know, and then showing up, you know, just kind of strengthen that connection. And then the other thing for trustees, which I'm going to put on a do later list, but it is recruiting advocates to write letters and communicate with decision makers. But seems to me that we need to focus on the duty of the trustees, and maybe if each trustee can kind of get in their mind to do more of this. And I don't know if I'm being unrealistic about that. So I'd like to open that up to discussion.
I mean, it's obvious, right? I mean, I feel like the board members, the trustees should be the first group that we look to advocate for the library. So I think it's a great idea to, you know, assign some duties and get everybody thinking that. You mentioned the Lorton opening. You know, I was at Sujatha and I were at the Tysons, and you know, John Krause was there. So I mean, there are those opportunities that they need to be kind of top of mind for us to talk to elected officials and others, and advocate for the library. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay, great. And Sujatha, any?
I echo that entirely. And I think that sometimes, like I've said to Jessica a couple of times, like it always seems to me that because we have such a competent library staff, you know, like we get all these kudos, but the library staff is doing everything. They just do everything. And
Yeah.
we say something and then they make it so. We have an idea, they make it so. It happens all the time, right? Any idea we have, they make it so. And it would be, you know, I think it's our there have to be duties. I think that there have to be duties when you have sort of like, you know, it's an honor. It's an honor to sit on a library board. You know what I mean? It is an honor. So there really should be some duties that, and to each in their ability, right? To each in their, whatever their strength is, right? So, you know, showing up at a thing is really, it's not, I mean, it can be, it's time consuming, and you know what I mean? It's something you can do. Like those of us who are not librarians have a different sort of responsibility, let's say, or different strength. And like you and Suzanne, you know, have particular awareness of how things work that makes it so, I mean, it seems to us like so effortless, the way that you come up with these ideas and things. To me, it seems, I shouldn't say to us, to me, it seems like, gosh, I wouldn't have thought of this, that, and the other thing. But there's some certain things that, like, for me, seem fairly easy because, like, so I just do advocacy all the time. So, you know, things, and also, like, I'm fairly active in the community, but also in like, say, social media. So like retweeting something or exposing something to a larger audience is something that I am happy to do when I can do it. But there's certain things like just participation. It does make people feel seen and heard, right? Like going to the sales like that. I mean, it makes people feel like, oh gosh, that's great. And they feel like you're their friend, you know, and because they're the friend of the library and you came to put in some sweat equity in it, and it means something to people who are constantly putting in sweat equity. So yeah, I think that like you know, if assigning, and not even assigning, but just making, and I don't know how it's a tough push, right? Because it's a tough push. Some people just don't want to, and you don't want to push. That's not really making it effortless for us seems to be what the library staff does, kind of just like, it seems like a very little push from you guys. You're very nice to us and don't demand anything of us, you know, always gentle with our feelings and our
Sure.
But you know what occurs to me too, when you're talking, is that it's sometimes my own. I'm nervous about talking to elected officials. I mean, I went up to Don Beyer because I was recently redistricted into his district, and I really liked his talk at Lorton because it was really focused on library. So I went up and I sort of plucked up my courage to go and introduce myself and tell him how much blah, blah, blah. But it occurred to me with what you were saying about the knowledge of what goes on in the library. Well, a couple of things, like I've been away from working there so long that there's so much more that is happening, especially under Jessica's leadership, that I'm not totally aware of. But it occurs to me that one part of the of what our ask in terms of interaction would be, you know, to have the question of like, tell me about your experience with the library, or how do you use the library, you know, when we're talking to just ordinary people that we don't know whether they're community influencers or not. We have no idea. It's not like, I know that's Don Beyer, or I know that's the county executive. And, you know, and when he came by the row of us at Lorton, I sort of totally gracelessly just said, could you give us more money? And my friend.
Well, you know what though? Seriously, Don Beyer is a specific one that he's so wonderful. He's a wonderful person. He's so wonderful, you know.
Yes.
And I was standing next to him at Lorton. And you know, like, I don't have that. I am not remotely intimidated by talking to. So I'm happy to take that on. Like I was saying, each one of us in their company strengths for sure. And I did say to him, you know, I didn't know whether he knew I was the Drainsville rep. And, you know, he represents a lot of people in Drainsville. He's not my rep, but he represents a lot of people. And he's a wonderful, kind, good, progressive person. I really think highly of Don Beyer, which makes it easier. When you do think highly of them, it makes it easier. But, and because of this advocacy work I do, I have built, like, I don't want to say relationships, but I know some of them. So, and I'm happy to do that. Like, you know, those of us who feel that way. But I did say to him, you know, well, I'm the library rep, and this is how I told him, this is how I got this job. And then John appointed me because this is how I got this job. So right now, libraries are under particular threat, you know, and I did say that they're under particular threat of censorship, et cetera. And so we have to be really strong. And I said, you know, and so, you know, we're here in support of this idea, this community. And because it was so well attended, I think sometimes our elected officials have no idea how much a community appreciates its library and the effort made in that particular, you know, the community center and library and playground and park right there. Yeah. How wonderful for that community. You know, it's just wonderful. And I think that Scott Serval was there. He was there. I know that Marlon Debuson was there, and he's Jerry Connolly's person, you know, or chief of staff or something, you know, he was there. So there was a lot of representation from a lot of people beyond our board of supervisors at state, you know, and nationally, to see how much funding like this or idea like this could mean. So yeah, I really yes, what you said, he's a wonderful one to do that too. To say, can you fund because he's just
he's an economist, and I think that's the committee, I forget the title of it, but I think that's the committee that he heads. I know I've seen like, what do you call it? The limousine liberals and Barcroft have had a couple of meet and greet and fundraising things, which I've been to. I don't live in Barcroft, but I live near Lake
Your
Bar.
Barcroft.
I mean,
Barcroft adjacent.
our precinct includes it, so we get included in those things. And yeah, he's just very self-effacing and and really
Smart.
intelligent.
So great.
Well,
Anyway,
I'd be happy to give like a current example of something that, as you all are talking about trustee duties, one of them is developing that advocate list so that you have an easy, accessible group of people that you can reach out to immediately when things are happening that might need action or statements or something like that. And at your meeting next week, myself and Diane Cohen from our technical operations division are going to provide a presentation about some of the proposed and adopted legislation that's happened across the US related to intellectual freedom, book challenges, and kind of the parental rights movement that is happening related to library materials. And what really instigated our interest in providing this update for you all is an administrative law change that's currently proposed in Missouri by their Secretary of State that's currently under public comment, which would allow for fining of librarians and teachers of up to $200,000 and a year in jail for a misdemeanor if you provide prurient materials to minors, which I think this board understands is an incredibly subjective statement, and it depends on your family and your situation and how actively parents are involved with their children in use of public library and school library materials. And those types of actions are becoming more bold and more invasive. And there are pathways that are being created even in our own Commonwealth that would support laws like that in the future. And I think you will see as those types of insidious laws start to take place and are effectuated, and there are lawsuits that go along with them, that the professional staff that you see in libraries now will diminish because people are not going to want to take on that level of personal responsibility where it should be a conversation between children and their parents about the materials that they utilize. So we're planning a presentation to the board on some of the laws in many states that have failed, that have been proposed, and that have passed. I believe Idaho's has passed. That was a $10,000 fine for individual library staff per transgression. So things like that, as they come up, those are things that having a list of advocates that you all could reach out to, that you have already built up really strong relationships, would be incredibly helpful. So that the Don Byers and the Jerry Connollys and the Board of Supervisor members and our community members who are not in elected official positions are already activated, that this group and the outreach committee and the full board have cultivated those relationships. When times are good, we're not actually asking them for things, so that when times are iffy and we really need their help to stop things or to promote things, if that is the instance as well, though that's not typically what we're seeing with these laws, that we've already got those folks kind of in the back pocket and ready to go. Virginia is a purple state, and even though our area is more progressive around things like this, it's balanced with a really red part of the rural community. So we have to extra pull our weight up here to ensure that public libraries and intellectual freedom opportunities are maintained across the Commonwealth, even if their localities are not as strongly supportive of it. So that's kind of my general example here. Fran and I, as she mentioned, had a really good discussion about this last week and trying to kind of hone in a little bit on the goals of this committee as opposed to what like the outreach committee does or the full board should be doing. And there's a lot of opportunity here, unfortunately, as we see more of these issues crop up. Sadly, thumbs down. Boo. I don't mean to like bum everyone out, but it's getting real serious out there. And I don't know, as you're trying to talk up entering this profession, for young professionals or for people who might want to do a career switch. It's really hard to balance the pros and cons at this point. Like the pros are, it's wonderful. You get to work with an amazing public. You get to serve people in a socially needed way. You get to talk about books. Great stuff. Con, you know, you might go to jail.
You might have to pay a fine.
You might
No.
have to pay $200,000 fine. Those are awful. Those are awful things to have to consider for a profession that is just trying to provide a space for people to educate and enrich themselves, and for families to together discuss the materials that they might want to bring into their homes.
And we have to think also that we are on many levels protected, not just by our government, but by our staff and by our like, you know, administrative library staff, right? So as these changes happen, and again, they happen like the light dimming slowly, they don't happen like this. So what happens is the light dims, our eyes adjust, light dims, our eyes adjust. And so that is how we lose democracy. And that's how any nation loses democracy. All of the signals are up for that to happen to us here. So we're just hanging on, and we go, yeah, it's super depressing. And I'm like so optimistic by nature, and I can't believe that I have become like this to have to see this. But the fact that we have this particular library director, right? That can change too when the sort of flavor changes and everything changes. You want somebody who will address, like you say, like that's what's happening in schools.
It's a chilling effect of
Yeah,
things.
it's a chilling effect. Parents' rights. Parents' rights. I mean, like I'm a parent, you're a parent, you know, and some parents' rights. Really, it's just some parents' rights. So it's not like it's not. And when you can say that, when you frame it as parents' rights, when you frame it as things that are, you know, arguably wonderful, having strong parenting relationships. Of course, nobody wants our children to be exposed to dangerous material, all of that. If you frame it as protecting youth, then you can change a narrative slowly. So, you know, you don't tell the whole story. And then you, despite our best efforts, if we don't have the right director in place, that chilling effect happens in our schools, in our libraries, in our public discourse, all over. So yeah, I mean, all you can do is clutch it, hope, and like you said, pull extra weight up here and hope.
Yeah, we're in a really fortunate position, at least here in Fairfax, that as you've heard from Diane and previous board committees and board presentations, we don't actually get a lot of challenges on our materials because we have a really transparent, open process so that people can challenge things and you know where you are in the process. But our collection development policy is also incredibly open, that not every material is for every person. And the wonderful thing about a public library is that we're already well attuned for parental rights in the broadest sense of the term. We hope that people come in with their families and they self-select materials that are right for their household and their learning initiatives. We don't impose those regulations on people either through the materials that we collect or the circulation policies that we have in place. That is up to a family to decide. And by imposing additional intellectual freedom challenges or censorship structures around the types of materials that are purchased or circulated in public libraries, you're actually diminishing a parent's rights, because there are lots of different types of families out there that may or may not self-select those same materials as, say, their neighbors or anyone else in the county. And that's the whole point. You have lots of options. It's up to you and your family.
And
But
this,
it doesn't, it's
is
like,
not-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, this isn't on the agenda, but this point in the conversation makes me wonder if, and in light of the suggestion that we have separated collections, that if a presentation on children's borrowing would be a good thing to have, because I don't know, I know it used to be that a parent signed a child's card for what they were permitted to do, but I don't know now what it is, like how a child gets a card, if there's an age restriction, how that, or whatever, and that might be a good presentation for the future for the board. I don't know, that just occurs to me. It's not part of this committee, but
No, it's an interesting suggestion.
part of
though.
this, it's part of that topic. Yeah,
It's pretty cut and dry. It could certainly be just something I include in my December director's report, because it is, if you are under 13, you have a parent come in with you and they sign you up for a library card. They're financially responsible for it. They should hopefully be utilizing the library with you. That's about it. And it's up to parents to decide what they want their children to take home with them. If
Okay.
you are 14 to 17, it's a little bit different. There is an assumption of maturity there. And in some cases, there's a need for youth of that age to access material that is for them alone. But I'd be happy to do that, friend. That's a great idea.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about, and I'd like us to just keep in mind, is that since, like you just mentioned the suggestion or whatever, however you put it, of separated collections, segregated or separated whatever collections that came from a board member, right?
Yeah.
We are at the mercy, the board is at the mercy of the Board of Supervisors, right? Like who they appoint, what the philosophy is of the person who appoints, and what who they would be, and like everything about what we do is at that mercy, right? We are lucky in Fairfax that we have this and such policy, that we have these and such parameters in place, these and such guardrails or lack of guardrails or whatever you want to call it. That can change, obviously, with the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees changes with the Board of Supervisors, So I don't know what protections can be always put in place, because I see this, like if you look at it with a little bit of a longer view, I don't mean like a 10-year view, because things always switch back, but with a shorter view, 2-3 years out, I would love to see us all be brainstorming. We've talked about it before, but be brainstorming about various ways for us to protect for some years, just that very idea that we have access to the materials, because it doesn't take very many people for the policy to change on the Board of Trustees, for the policy to change.
Mhm.
And that can happen like this too, just as quickly as the Board of Supervisors can change, just as quickly as the majority in your state houses and national houses change. So I don't know.
That's interesting, because that another policy question came up about the whole thing of naming furniture and stuff, and this is another policy. So maybe did we sort of talk about an ad hoc policy committee, and maybe
There is an ad hoc policy committee. I don't believe that Brian has stood it up at this point. There was
Wasn't that the one that Sheila was on?
Gary and Sheila.
Gary,
Yeah. So some of our colleague agencies, like the Park Authority, have their policies queued up for review and potential revision on a cycle. So
Mhm.
ours are only reviewed either when the chair deems it necessary, or if there is an occurrence that happens that makes it obvious that something needs to be done, like your current policy that's up for action in November around all virtual meetings. That one has to be done to be legally compliant to allow you to do
right,
it.
yeah.
But the Park Authority, I don't know what their cycle is, but every 4 or 5 years, they just go through the whole thing.
Mhm.
And that gives you kind of a standard structure to know when things might be updated that otherwise might sit dormant for a while. I don't know that that's
Mhm.
anything we need to do, and it would certainly be up to the chair to make that decision, or the full board if you wanted to amend your bylaws to wrap that into it.
I'm never trying to create new, I'm never looking for new projects myself, and I'm never trying to assign new projects to others, but I'm just saying that
I think that's-
considering
Yeah.
the board we have right now and its mind to this in terms of protection of the protection of access, right? And that can change.
Well,
at
so
any
John,
time.
I'm inclined to ask if I could assign the review of the bylaws to you to see if there is anything in there that around the point that you're making.
I'm happy.
How do
to
you
take
feel
a
about
look at
that
it.
assignment?
I know I'm the only problem with me is that I'm terrible at stuff, but considering that, every question I ask in the library board, staff just answers it for me.
But this is just read
This
the
particular
bylaws and
thing.
see what you see.
Yeah, I would
May I-
just,
may I
I would
write
be
that
interested in
down that
seeing,
you
like,
will-
how safe is it and how long is it safe? I don't know how even to go about doing it, but yeah, it seems to me that
Well,
it would be worth taking the look,
Okay, because the bylaws are, you can click on the link and get to them.
Yeah.
And you're looking for a specific issue. It's not like I'm saying, oh, look
Looking
at
for a
all the
specific issue.
bylaws, Sujatha, and see what, no.
Yeah,
Just
I am
around
like
the
the
point, 'cause I
world's
think-
most disorganized person. This
I
is the
think
only.
that's it, but I'm writing it down,
But yeah,
honey.
I'm
so-
writing it down too.
Fran, you might want to mention that to Brian as well, just in case he's inclined to move forward something like a bylaw amendment, if this committee recommends anything forward, so he's not surprised.
I wrote that down in my note to myself to let Brian know that
Yes.
we're gonna take a little dive into just to see if there's anything about collection access.
Absolutely. Well,
Right,
and a
okay.
thing to, your current board is a reflection of our current elected officials, which it's meant to be. It's meant to be a
Yeah.
reflection
Yeah.
of the community as they are elected, electing people into the board of supervisor positions. So the definitions and terminology that this board might be using may not be the same definitions and terminology that a future board might use. And it is a good thing that we are reflective of our community and that we are supporting their needs and interests within the core pillars of what a public library does. So whatever is recommended around maybe modified language in there, hopefully would be broad enough to support whatever variations of a board might come in the future.
What concerns me always, even about like that, what you just said, which is, one would think would be ostensibly true. We have very low turnout. We have a hyper low turnout for hyper local elections. So in fact, our elected officials are very rarely a reflection of our community, and certainly very rarely a reflection of the community that most needs and uses our library, as evidenced by our hotspots, right? So when we looked at the hotspot, you did the overlay, you looked at hotspots, and then you look at who participates mostly in hyperlocal elections, et cetera. We are very rarely a reflection, which then, we are making some assumptions because we don't have people's votes. So there is that. And especially when you have a community that has so much language variance, and we know what the communication is for people who are, undocumented, and they don't vote in the first place. And quite a huge number of people who are undocumented and don't vote, but do pay into our system, so the idea that they are untaxed, that we're not collecting taxes from them is not true. They very often are paying quite a bit of money into our community and yet don't have representation and don't have the language and don't participate and therefore don't make their voices heard. So with that in mind, I don't know. Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
I want to circle back. I want to circle back to the agenda for a moment, and the review of the trustee fan duties. And I want to, with the things that I said, and then I want to add the develop advocate list with what Jessica said about identifying community members. Let's see, can you do later list, recruit advocate list. Well, this will be part of the advocate list, I think.
Yeah, those are just my notes for the minutes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I think this kind of gets us away. We were sort of treading in, I don't know, deep waters of like reaching out and getting groups. And I think we're gonna kind of, to me, like pulling back on that, focusing on trustee roles, and then the second part of a trustee duties is identifying some community members. And I think I brought up last time with my book group, I brought it up to my book group about whether they would be interested in being an advocate for the library, and it was unanimously yes. So I think it can be pretty easy with your friends that are involved and interested in contributing to that, which then brings me to the next thing, which is the elevator talk. And what occurred to me is, would a bullet list of important points on different topics be more useful? I know for me, if I had an elevator talk, I think, well, now should I memorize this? Or and I find it easier to have in my mind important points and then can weave them into a conversation. Thoughts from committee members? I'd like to hear. I know, Parker, I haven't heard from you in a while.
No, this was kind of on my mind. I think, giving trustees and others a set of talking points on each of these topics. We talked about how some people are nervous talking to elected officials. You know, whenever we have fly-ins of our employees, you know, we arm them with talking points because they are nervous. And I tell them all the time, why should you be nervous? Because the elected official should be the one who's nervous talking to you, because you can vote them in or out of office.
That's
So
great. Yeah.
I think it's just arming people with a set of talking points, you know, 3, 4, you know, simple talking points that they can use. It gives them confidence when they're having those conversations with whoever it might be. So I think that's a great deliverable for this committee, to put together and arm not only the trustees but others with these talking points.
Now, and it just popped into my head. I remember one workshop I went to, they were talking about the questions that you should ask when during campaigns, that you should ask people who are running for office. And I think along with talking points, maybe questions like, would you support X? Or, you know, I don't know if that's too pointed, but I think, you know, it's something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be times where, you know, we will want to be pushing something or, you know, asking for support. And so I think there's kind of those general talking points in terms of the importance of the library to the community, you know, those types of general talking points. But then on each of these, you know, budget support, censorship, you know, all these individual topics, I think having, you know, just 2 or 3 bullet points for people to, you know, feel comfortable. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, great. Sujatha, thoughts? Sujatha, are you muted? You must be muted.
Sorry, I echo all of that. And I think that we have zero reason to be afraid of them. And in fact, they very much do respond to advocacy. They do. They like it. They enjoy it. That's why they're doing it. They're not doing it not wanting to interact with us. They do it and they do want to interact with us, right?
Yeah.
So when you build a relationship with them, it's even easier to do that, to have that. And if you do things in your community, they're super appreciative of it too. So if you are somebody who is active in your community on various different things that they think are valuable, and they see that you, especially if you have a reputation of being, I will say, I think that if you have the reputation of being indefatigable, and very purposed, not mean and rude, like you're not just doing, like not, you know, like I have a reputation, I will throw like grenades into whole issues, but everybody is aware that I'm doing it because I am indefatigable on this particular topic. And so even if I'm making it rough for people, at least it's, you know, I mean, I'm not saying something, I mean, there are people who attack our elected officials in very personal ways, talk about the person, their appearance, their weight, their hair or lack of hair. I mean, it's just awful, the things that people will do. So if you are an advocate who never interacts on things like that, always about the issues, and they understand that you come from a place of like the NAACP motto is no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent issues. If you're constantly thinking no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, all permanent issues, and the library is a permanent issue, and supporting the library is a permanent issue, then will never be a problem. And if you're being boom, boom, boom about it and insisting and willing to talk to their staff, you know, like, you know, they'll give you their card, you talk to their staff, you build the relationship, you get to talk to them, and it makes a huge, huge difference. And I think that in terms of the longer goal of like doing like the park did and getting themselves funded in that way, this groundwork that we might take on will yield just tremendous benefits. That's what I think.
Good. Okay. So, so who should do that talk? Are we ready to make a list of talking points? And should
Staff
that
can
be-
certainly draft them for you all if you'd like.
Okay,
Future review and addition and edits.
that'd be terrific.
Do you want them, the bullets, excuse me. Do you want those on the 3 major talking points alone, or do you want some of the general ones for political, for the politicians who are running as well. Like, would you support X, Y, and Z?
Hmm. Do we need to do, I don't think we need, well, aren't we sort of putting the expanded and uniform hours on hold, right? So,
We can't stop it at this point.
so for the budgetary support and for censorship.
Okay.
Committee, does that sound good to you? I should change my view so I can see your faces.
Yeah, I guess I would include just kind of general talking points for the value of libraries in our communities, and then talking points on those two topics.
Okay,
That's
I
great.
can have that for your next committee meeting.
Okay, that's great. Anything else on that? I just want to respond to Suja. I think you made really good points, having been at the school board meetings when people stand up and address the board as, hello, you groomers. I mean, it's just shocking how rude they are. And also I think I was thinking sort of the different level, almost a different level of advocate, because we could be with, people who are not used to talking to politicians and who are going to be writing a letter, which is, much less stressful. But also this, I think, will help get them reduce that stress level. And it's true that you shouldn't feel that way, but I know I do. And I'm not a meek person, but so I think recognizing that. But I know one of my friends who I asked last year to write a letter, I told her a little bit, but she added really great stuff of her own. And I think that's a thing from that I really liked from one of the workshops, is like that we provide the information and then community members provide the emotion or the story or the personal. And I think that's going to be really great. So, okay, good. I think we're okay to move on to the review of budget timeline coordination. We'll be working with Keith's committee on that. Is that right, Jessica? That's really all I need to say, right?
Yeah, so part of the discussion that Brandon and I had earlier was, okay, what about the next coming budget season? The library has submitted the budget. It's being developed right now by County Management Budget for submission to the county exec's office. We've got a couple months before it actually is released, and we don't know what's going to be in there. And both Fran and Keith were on similar wavelengths because he had already requested some talking points for the board about our budget submission, so that before it's even fully developed and released, we can start talking with those elected officials to ensure that library priorities are included if funding is available. So the talking points are being included as part of your budget your board packet for your meeting next week. So there'll be a more full board discussion at that November 9th meeting.
And I asked for the finance committee report to go before ours because I felt like I sort of,
Yep.
I didn't step on Keith's toes, but he,
All good. Yep. That's already in there.
So I just think that will be really good. And then other committee deliverables, my goodness, I think we've done a lot today. Anything else on that committee deliverables? Okay, so as a review.
Can I ask a question?
I'm
Ask your
sorry,
thought on
no,
something?
no, of course.
I apologize. I had a thought, and I want to hear what you guys think of this thought, because it's fairly simple thought, I think, but I think it's fun, and I don't know.
Ready.
What are the chances that the Board of Trustees would be interested in doing something like somehow or other sharing what we're reading, like in a way that asks community to contribute with what they're reading? I know that might sound dumb, but I really love to hear what people are reading, and I love to tell people what I'm reading, and I do it like constantly. And I actually have like all kind of group chats where there's a special place where we store the books that we're reading. And the books. So I have books that I listen to and books that I'm reading, and I have different books that I'm reading for different. Like I have books that I read when I'm in the woods. I have books that I read when I'm in the gym. I have books that I read when I'm cooking. I'm listening to. And I think it's fun. I just think it's fun to hear what people are reading and why a particular person might like this book and not like this book. you know, it's fun. Like I enjoy Jessica's podcast for that. I just think it's fun listening to what people are reading. And I think that we're the library board. So, and like when you do things like when there's a board member who is talking about a book, but they haven't read the book and they're just like, and I mean, it just sort of like,
Oh, yeah.
it puts the, I mean, onus on us to be readers.
You are not far off, Sujatha. So the last library system I ran before here was in Contra Costa. And I had a library advisory board there. It wasn't a governing body, but it was about 40 members. It was very large. And they
You froze at the best part.
Oh, no,
Jessica.
you're
No.
frozen. What happened?
No,
That
that's
was
the
on
best
purpose.
part. She froze.
That was on purpose. Dramatic.
Totally.
Who censored her? Come back.
I just finished. I just
On
finished.
bated
Wizard
breath. What did they do? What did they do?
What?
Look, I don't even know what to say.
What can we do? Bobby, help
There
us.
she is. There she is. Look at yourself. Look at you frozen there,
You're
right at the
frozen.
critical moment, Jessica.
I
Right
can't
at the
see
critical-
myself. It logged. Can you hear me?
Yes,
can see
yes.
you.
That's hilarious. No. It's
So
on
in
screen
Contra
sharing now
Costa,
still,
you
too.
with your
Contra,
advisory.
you literally
board,
froze at the point where
do-
you were going to tell us the good part.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
What did you do with your advisory board?
That's a hoot. No, it actually logged me out. I had to log back in.
Huh.
So the library advisory board started every meeting with sharing what they were reading. And it expanded so much that it took up most of their meeting time. It was more like
I can imagine that.
than
yeah.
it was like an advisory board. So we had to put a time limit on it. So if you are interested in something like that, which I am sure many of your colleagues would be, I suggest you put it at the end of the meeting during the roundtable, just to ensure that you can get through the regular business portion of your meeting.
Well, I think it would be so much fun. And I was even thinking like, you know, of starting the problem is that now I really think I need to get off of Twitter because with the recent
Oh,
development
yeah.
of Twitter, I mean, like the use of the N-word has increased 500%. Anti-Semitism has increased even more than that. I mean, it's just awful. It's become like 4chan. It's going to become like that. And I don't want to be part of it. So now I'm like hoping that somebody creates some method because I don't want to be on Facebook anymore. I don't want to be on Twitter anymore, but some kind of way for us to share it and ask the community to join us. I just think threads of what people are reading are so much fun and I learn so much and I get so many great ideas. I don't know. I
am
love
sure
the
we could-
idea of our sharing in our roundtable. Definitely. I love that idea, but I also love the idea of just finding a way, and I don't know the way, but finding a way or brainstorming a way for us to do that with our.
Well, I think that the first step is to have a library trustee group as our speaker for My Perfect Read, which we host. It's a televised program that we do on Channel 16 that Ted Kavich is the host of, which
Well, I will do that
It's
like
amazing.
in a minute.
done. Okay. I will gather a group of like-minded folks. We can start there. There's lots of ways.
Oh,
that
that
we
would
can
be
do
so
it.
much
Yeah,
fun.
well, I'll do it.
Okay.
It would be so much
Parker,
fun.
I notice you're very quiet. Do you not want to be on TV to talk about
I probably have to get approvals from my public affairs folks. So I don't know.
I was joking. I
I think
was
it's silly, but
lightly
No.
teasing.
I
There
have
are
to
lots of ways that we could effectuate something like that.
I think it would just be
Um,
great fun.
We
I have a face for radio. So yeah.
I also have
Stop
a piece of
it.
radio.
That's not true. That's not true.
you know what? Books are for everyone. Books are amazing. Doesn't matter what we look like. And also you two look just fine. So
Yeah, yeah.
calm it down.
I have something funny to share in that I have a cousin who lives over by Bailey's, and we don't see each other very often, but he called me and I was taking the cat to the bed, so I couldn't take the call. And he said, well, you'll be happy to know that someone read Branch Out. And I liked your article. So I was like, wow. And he is a staunch Republican too. So I was like, okay, I got to find out why.
Freedom to read is for everyone. If you start taking it away for one group, it will very surely go
Yeah.
away for everyone.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It
Okay.
always comes, whatever you do, it always comes back. So make sure that what you do is something you wouldn't mind having done to you, because it always comes back. Don't.
That's why I read every detail of the minutes, because that's the reason. because it's gonna be there forever as a record of what the board did, and it has
And when
to
you go back, like
be as
when they
close
did
to
the
perfect as
segregation report,
possible.
when they did the segregation report and they went back and they have the minutes, and if you have read the entirety of that document that they put together, just that brilliant, just brilliant. And they have the minutes and you're like, and my daughter did this project when she was in high school where she was looking at, school board records, and it was part of her essays for college. And the minutes, the things that people said with no thought in just part of the minutes. And then, there it is forever.
So, I think we're getting down, to the end. I think we accomplished a lot today. Am I wrong about that, or does
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
feel that way?
Good.
To make good progress. Oh, next meeting, do we want to have another meeting? Nah, we're good. So, let me look at my calendar. Look at our calendars. Oof.
Next month is December. Yikes.
Oh
Mhm.
my gosh.
But then we have, what about November 29th? Does that sound weird?
I'm on an interview panel that day, but Kevin, I am sure, could sit in.
Okay, or the 30th, it's a Wednesday instead. I'm trying to move it further away from the board meetings because I find that kind of difficult. I don't know why.
I don't have, I can do that day, but I can't do 10 o'clock either of those days.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah, 10 o'clock's not great for me either. How about afternoon? What's a good time in the afternoon?
On the 30th?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can do 11 on, but is that not good for,
I can't do till afternoon on either of them.
I'm open in the afternoon, so whatever.
yeah.
How about
so
3?
it's-
3 I can do well, I can do either the 29th or the 30th at 3, whichever.
So November 30th, 3 p.m.,
Oh, we're
right?
Sounds good.
And
Oh, 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. I need to. Sometimes I'm not, as I
What?
have told you, I'm not the most organized and make mistakes. If I don't check all the calendars, I shouldn't have more than one, but I do. Yeah, I'm
that's,
good.
but it's okay for you.
Mhm.
Okay. And so, and the assignments then, what do we have for assignments? We only Sujata
I have
had.
to look at bylaws.
Right, that's right.
I'll draft your bullet points.
Staff is gonna do bullet points for us. Should we three be, is it too soon for us to identify? Yeah, we don't need to do that yet, right?
Identify what? Identify what?
Tap a friend or people
Oh.
to be our,
It's never too early.
Hmm?
It's never too early.
okay, do you wanna take that on as an assignment to at least one, if not more?
Person
What's-
to be,
ID someone that you can call on to be one of our advocates.
I can do that.
Oh, sure. Okay.
One or more.
All of my friends are like ready and waiting. I only
Yeah.
have pro-library friends. Always
So
looking
I'm
for
writing down at least one advocate. Because then we will soon have deliverables for them. And we're getting closer to the budget time. Excellent. Anybody have anything else? Parker, Sujata, anything else? Jessica?